Morning everybody and welcome to the show. How you doing, buddy?
Good.
Ready to get started?
Oh yeah.
Today we're going to be working on a 2019 Honda Accord. One of the unique features of the Honda Accord is something that a lot of cars are starting to move to, and that is the floating screen in the dash. We're starting to see that in the aftermarket side as well. We have a few manufacturers that are producing floating radios like this that'll allow you to retrofit your car to look like one of these newer cars. And this style radio does pose a few challenges for us in the aftermarket world. For one, we're not going to be replacing out this radio. It's got to stay. It's part of the car. All the data in the car passes through this radio. Air conditioning, drive control, gas, pretty much anything that you're going to be doing in the car is somehow going to be integrated into this touchscreen. So what that means for us is that we're going to be integrating into the factory systems in this car. So we're going to have a lot of testing we're going to have to do that. But before we get to that point, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing in this car for this particular customer, because he had a certain set of requirements that were important to him. Right off the bat, he wants bass because there is no subwoofer in here. It didn't come with the factory one. He's also got 2 kids, which means double the amount of fun that he takes with him. So he doesn't want a big box enclosure. He's also got this plastic floor mat in here that he wants to keep. We've talked on the phone about a couple of options, and one of the things that he would like to do in this car is a subwoofer that is downfiring so that he can still put stuff on top of it, and is a small footprint. So when it sits in the trunk, it's not going to take up a ton of room, and he can move it wherever he needs to in case he has to put kid stuff in the back, which he does frequently. The other thing is he really doesn't want to see any of the equipment. There's no room underneath where the spare tire is because it has a full spare tire that of course he still wants to be able to get to. We talked about putting it on one of the side panels here, up here somewhere, or over here. He wasn't too keen on that idea and really wants to put it somewhere that's totally out of the way. After doing a little bit of looking around in the car, what we come up with is this area here underneath the passenger seat. There's a lot of room here. There is some vents that come out from underneath. The floor mat tends to stick underneath it a little bit. The seat sits on these risers here, which means that we can build a panel that suspends itself over this, allows the airflow to still come out, and mounts the amplifier firmly up underneath the seat and keeps it tucked in out of the way. Because of that, space being a premium, we're going to go with an integrated DSP amplifier. That is an amplifier that has all the processing, all the inputs, all the things that we're going to need to integrate into this factory stereo already built into it, so we don't have any other equipment we have to hide somewhere in the car. It'll streamline the installation process just a little bit. Because we are going to be doing a DSP in the car, we're going to be doing time alignment. That means that we're going to need some information from the customer, specifically his size and where he's sitting in the car. Very important that you have this in order to do time alignment. Sometimes we're fortunate and the customer is still here and it allows us to get those measurements beforehand. And what we're looking to do is figure out where his head is in relationship to all the speakers in the vehicle. Now when doing these measurements, what you want to do is measure from here to the cone of the speaker. Now keep in mind the speakers are in the door panels. What you want to do is add about 2.5 inches to your measurement so that you can compensate for that. In this case, we're just going to be doing a set of components up front that are going to be passive, meaning we're going to be using the crossovers that come with those components. When doing time correction, the preferred method is to do active. In this case, we're just going to be measuring to the mid-range. We do this a lot and we've had great success with how it turns out. So once we get the measurements done, we're not putting away the tape measure quite yet. That just got us a little bit of a head start at the end of the installation. One of the other things we do is we measure the location of the seat. We have several key points that we do that on. And the reason we're going to do that, as we're doing the install, this seat is going to move. So we have wiring that's going to be running along this panel, or maybe running along this panel. We want to be able to put the seat back in the same location it was when he brought it in. Now, if we're lucky, it'll have seat memory on it and we don't have to worry about it. But in this case, this car doesn't. What that means is that we're going to take several different measurements for this install. We want to know how far it is from the steering wheel to the base of the headrest, how far it is from the bottom of the steering wheel to the crease in the seat, the headrest to the ceiling, front of the seat to the gas pedal, the bottom of the seat to the floor, both front and back, from the bottom of the back of the seat to the ceiling, as well as the front of the seat to the ceiling. That way we can move this back in to the exact position it was. We also gauge on how big the customer is when he's sitting in the car, because we need to still be able to tune the car. As you saw, he is a tall gentleman. We'll have to make sure we shim ourselves up in the seat so that when we're listening, we're at about his head height. anytime we bring a car into the install bay before we start our installation, we want to protect as much of the interior as possible. We also place carpet over the armrest. If there's a gear shifter, we have a gear shifter boot, and the steering wheel, of course, gets covered as well. The idea is to keep the car as safe as possible while we're working on it. If there's any panel that's going to be removed or anything that could possibly get scraped, we also cover it in tape, a couple different layers, to make sure that nothing will happen to that. Because we'll be working on the battery here up underneath the hood, we also want to make sure we protect the side of the vehicle and any other area that we're going to be working on. What we want to do at this point is figure out what this factory stereo is doing to the car. Not the RTA yet, we don't need to know that, but what we want to do is check polarity. We want to see if the factory has anything in or out of polarity relative to the other speakers in the car. For example, is this tweeter in polarity with this mid-range? There's also back tweeters in the very back corners, which we're going to negate, but we want to see what's going on back there as well. This particular vehicle doesn't have a factory subwoofer, and what that probably means is it has a base model system, meaning there's no exterior amplifier. But we'll talk about that more as we proceed through the install. To do polarity check, you need the polarity popping sound. Basically, it moves the speaker and there's a tool that will read that. We have multiple versions of this depending on what the car has. In this case, this car does not have a CD player anywhere in the car. It works strictly off of the USB because this car has CarPlay. To do our polarity test, we will be using a phone that has the track recorded on it. To test for polarity, there are apps that you can download on your phone. However, we are going to be using our phone to generate the polarity, so we'd have to have a long enough cable to move it around to each speaker. There are tools you can also buy as well, and that's our preferred method. I'm a collector. I like to collect tools, and I have a collection of polarity tools. We have all different styles depending on the situation. This tool here, the PT9A, will generate a test tone, both aux and over test leads. It has a microphone in the tip here. This one here is very similar to it. This is a Select Products version. This is a wand style that you just put up next to the speaker and it lights up green and red. And this does the same thing as well. Go ahead and play the test track. The speaker is going to make a popping sound. We can put our tester to it, and this track puts out a green, green, red pop, which we're seeing here. Tweeter is doing green, green, red. We'll move on to the mid bass. Mid bass is doing green, green, red. We'll check the rear of the car also. We'll check the far tweeter. Now that we've done that check, we know that all the speakers in the car, tweeters and mid-range, are all moving in the same direction. Nothing that is reversed to its counterpart. Knowing that information at the beginning saves us a little bit of time at the end while we're moving through the car. One of the things that we talked about in this install with this particular customer, he's worried about rattle. He realizes that there is going to be a certain amount of vibration in the door, and he wants to eliminate that as much as possible. We're going to do a sound treatment on his door. Now, we offer a couple different sound treatments depending on your needs. In this case, he's selected our premium sound treatment, and what that's going to consist of, the actual door panel itself. We want to go over any of the seams that the door panel has, make sure that they don't rattle. We're going to concentrate on the actual mount of the speaker as well as behind the speaker on this exterior of the door, which is where a lot of the rattle comes from. We're also going to be doing the rear deck. We do the back side of the rear deck completely along with the rear deck itself, using a couple different materials along the way, which we'll show once we get to that portion of the install. For speakers, he is going to be doing a set of components up front, as we said, and a set of coaxials for the rear. Even though the rear is a factory component set, he really didn't see the need to do that because he's not super excited about rear fill. He does have kids that are going to sit back there, but most of the time they have their headphones in and they're listening to their own thing. He just wants it for the effect. When doing a system like this, if you look at it on a sheet of paper, it seems pretty simple. Install a 5-channel amp, set of components up front, coaxials in the rear, and a subwoofer. That's really about it. Reality is, though, it's a much bigger process. Installing that amplifier, it's a full DSP amplifier, and it has to integrate with a factory stereo. We're doing sound treatment on the doors. Very time-consuming process. Time management is crucial when doing a job like this. We have a certain amount of time in which we need to finish it. Once we're even done with it, we're not technically done with it yet. We still have a couple hours in which we have to sit in the car, what I like to call debugging, testing, and tuning. Getting a plan from the get-go together and starting on it is important. important. One of the things we do right when a car comes in, along with all this testing, is we spend a couple minutes going over the criteria of the car. Now we need to spend some time going over with my partner Fernando what he's going to be responsible for and what I'm going to be responsible for. That also means where he's going to be at in the car relative to where I'm going to be at in the car. He's going to start on the sound treatment. We do have to go over what's actually going in the car because although I've been telling you, I've been neglecting him. We're going to do our premium treatment package. We want to make sure we cover all the joints on here, do this focus here, and of course get the whole inside skin of the door panel as much as possible. We're not doing the back doors because there's no speakers in here, but we are going to do the rear deck. Let's put select on the top. We're putting the Tempo Ultras in here with fast rings. We'll have to figure out where we can put the crossover. As far as integration goes, I have to get the dash apart and figure out what's going on there. We're going to be mounting the bass knob in underneath that USB. Everything is going to go underneath the passenger seat.
Okay.
So what I'm thinking is we'll build a floating amp rack off of the floor so that the mat still goes underneath it, which will also allow the heat and air to come out. He lives in North Carolina, not here in Florida. We want to make sure that still functions.
And then power wire coming this driver's side?
Power wire will come through the driver's side. Okay. Unless there's a hole in the firewall, which I haven't checked yet. There is a giant grommet there. I have to get the glove box out because the ANC mics that we have to disable, I believe are below the airbag and above the glove box.
Yes.
I think on the last one we did, that's where it was at in the newer vehicle. So what I'm thinking is starting on the driver's door,
okay,
or the rear deck.
I was thinking start.
Well, I have to do all the testing, so I got to get the radio out of the dash. I'm thinking we save that door for last once I go to start doing the amp rack. I think going in the natural transition, go 1, 3, 4, and then come back to 2 would probably make the most sense. Just because I don't think there's anything I need to do on that side of the car.
Side, okay.
And you're going to have a couple hours on that. I don't think there's anything we need to pull apart on this side as far as flow rails go, because the subwire will go up the passenger side here.
Correct, and then the signal. Yeah.
Come up with a strategy as far as what we want to do. If you heard me say 1, 3, 4, 2, that's how we refer to the speaker positionings in the car. Driver 1, passenger 2, 3 and 4 are the rear. There again it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. That is a pattern that we talk about anytime we're doing an amplifier, speaker locations, wiring on the radio. It's just something we've come up with to make it easier to understand. Instead of having to say passenger, rear, drivers, he's going to start on this door, getting it apart, getting me that factory speaker so we can figure out what kind of paneling we have to come up with, because one of the things we're not going to do is chop up the factory speaker or anything hokey like that. If it needs a panel, we'll build a panel. Before we get started on this door, we want to talk about tools that you're going to need in order to perform said task. This is plastic, this is vinyl, it scratches super easy, so you need a tool that's not going to scratch it. You just don't grab a big flathead screwdriver like this and start going at it. Also, this is a panel clip remover. This is designed to go behind a panel and pull a panel out, not come at it from the front to pop it out. For that, you need something that's made out of soft material that won't scratch the plastic. We have a couple different versions of it. This is a giant panel tool. The reason why this is cool is because in certain situations where you need a tool like this because of its strength, you can use this tool because of its strength. In finer detail work, we have these two guys here. The white is the softest of the two. If we're doing something that we're really scared of scratching, we use this tool because it can get in there and this will break, chip, or bend long before the plastic panel that we're taking out will. Then this guy here is one of my personal favorites because it's nice and rigid, it's very soft, and it can get into places further up in that a normal tool won't do. That's not to say we don't still have a bunch of the little blue ones because those are specialty. They can get in and do a lot of neat things. Now, there is one other test we do, but we had to wait until we get the driver's door panel off in order to do that. And that is testing for ANC, or automatic noise cancellation, some people call it, fake engine noise. There's a ton of different names for it, but basically it does one of two things. One, in the case of what Honda usually likes to do, it pumps in noise that is designed to kill cabin noise. Think of it as like a set of noise canceling headphones, but in the whole car. The second is if you have something like a V6 engine and the car manufacturer wants it to sound bigger and meaner, then they'll pump in like a growl sound into the speaker. Either way, all of them are a headache when it comes to adding a subwoofer, especially in the Hondas. Now, not all Hondas have it, and you want to test for it. What you're going to need is something like this, which is a handheld RTA. This is going to allow us to see the signal that's coming to the speaker, and as we rev up the engine or make noise in the car, it will react accordingly. The reason why we needed to wait until the door panel was off is so we can get to these front speaker wires in order to do the test. Put some test leads onto the negative positive speaker wires here, then those those are gonna get plugged in. Next, you wanna get into the vehicle, roll up all the windows. That's important because controlling the windows actually will turn it on and off. Make sure the trunk is closed, make sure the seat is folded up. Connect the RTA and rev it up. That's something you don't wanna see. That means that there is ANC in this particular car. Now, another telltale sign for it is usually there's microphones in multiple locations in the car, such as up here by the handles. Usually there's one in the back somewhere. Depending on your make, model, and car, there are certain ways that they can be disabled. Usually in the Honda Accords, there is a silver box that just gets unplugged and it shuts the whole thing down. In some other vehicles, you actually have to go into the programming of the car and shut it off. Some of them, it's just as simple as going to the microphones and unplugging them. Each car manufacturer likes to torture us in their own specific way. The reason why we use this particular RTA, this one does not have a microphone that is actually active on it. And the reason why is you can pick up noise over that microphone that mimics ANC. Most customers are not even aware of this, so when you tell them, oh, your car has, they're like, what? I don't hear that. And that means it's working, because you're not supposed to know that it has it. Well, what happened if we didn't disable that in this particular car is that every time they go to accelerate, you saw how that was in the low frequency band. The subwoofer would try to reproduce that. And then the car would try to counter that, and then it would get louder, and eventually what happens is it just rails up until the point to where the subwoofer just sounds like it's gonna explode. That's also a dead giveaway the car has it. You don't wanna get to that point. You wanna make sure before you start that you know as much as you can. This will also save us time in the end and possible headache.